Welcome to the crossover you've always wanted to see yet could never imagine how it would work. This is Fire Emblem Wars, a ROM hack of Advance Wars 2 by Kartal. While this ROM hack retains the usual gameplay of Advance Wars, the units and commanders have been completely overhauled into Fire Emblem characters, with the music and graphics changed to match. Since players of this ROM hack may struggle learning the new unit relations and how the commanders work, this video will serve as an introduction to the units, commanders, and how they all interact with one another. You'll see that they are far more than merely reskins of existing units, even if they may serve similar functions. Now, onto the units. First up is the Knight. The Knight is the most basic unit in the game, getting its sprite from the unmounted Knight class from Fire Emblem 3. It costs 1500 gold to deploy, moves 4 spaces, and captures properties, much like the Advance Wars infantry unit. Its attack power leaves a lot to be desired. It does the most damage to other knights and rogues, the latter taking more damage than knights, interestingly. They're exceedingly fragile, however, so while you do need them to capture properties, they quickly become unfavorable compared to their more powerful counterpart, the Rogue. The Rogue is the second capturing unit. It costs 3,000, twice as much as the Knight, and moves 5 spaces, and captures properties. If your income allows for it, this unit is already more appealing than the Knight thanks to that one extra movement, but this unit is also more effective in combat. It does excellent damage against fighters, Corsairs, and indirect units, and damage against social knights is not that bad. However, the Rogue is even more fragile than the Knight is. It can't take a hit from many units at all. It's also noteworthy for having a high vision of 5 spaces. The Armor Knight. The Armor Knight is a heavily defensive foot unit. It costs 5,000 gold, moves 4 spaces, and its weapon deals heavy damage to social knights, paladins, and knights and rogues too. It shrugs off attacks from most units that aren't a fighter, wyvern knight, mage, or bishop. You better keep it away from red dragons too, but really, the idea behind the Armor Knight is defense and anti-cavalry. Suffice to say, map size should also be a deciding factor in whether or not you deploy an Armor Knight since they move so slow. On smaller maps, you definitely want these to clog up choke points. On bigger maps, maybe think twice. Watch what your enemy is building and judge whether you need one Armor Knight or many. The Hero. The Hero is a foot unit that deals heavy damage to, honestly, just about everything. The cost is pretty steep at 16,000, but it moves 6 spaces and will deal with just about any threat coming your way. In particular, this is a unit meant to counter dragons and wyverns. Most other units will struggle with these beasts. Heroes only really fear 2 things. Paladins especially, but watch out for wyvern knights as well. They do pretty good damage to heroes. If you've got the cash for this mighty all-rounder, go ahead and get lots of them. The Fighter. The Fighter is a counter to some of the units that work best in swarms. It costs 6,000, moves 5 spaces, and will do the most amount of damage to Armor Knights, Pegasus Knights, Social Knights, and indirect attackers. But make sure your fighters stay away from the rogues, wyvern knights, paladins, dragons, and other fighters and corsairs, as these do decent to excellent damage to fighters. The Corsair. At first glance, the Corsair will look exactly like a fighter, costing the same 6,000 and moving the same 5 spaces. The difference is that the Corsair can move on ocean terrain and move across rivers like it's a road. This will be immensely helpful depending on the map. They can handle social knights, Pegasus Knights, and even wyvern knights better than fighters, but a Corsair especially does immense damage to black wyverns and ocean dragons, units that will severely annoy you. Corsairs need to watch out for the same units as the fighter, rogues and wyvern knights, and they don't exactly fare well against armor knights either. The Hunter. The Hunter is the game's physical indirect unit. The cost is 4,500, it moves 5 spaces, and they have a range of 2 to 3 spaces. They can do pretty good damage to most units that aren't armor knights, and they can be especially dangerous for Pegasus Knights, as you'd expect. Wyverns and dragons resist their arrows pretty well though. They're very weak defensively, however they have an extra perk. They handle forest and mountain terrain much better than any other unit. Try perching them in the mountains for extra defense and safety from direct combat units. Just don't send them to the beach or river. Hunters also boast the best vision of all, 6 spaces, very impressive. The Mage. The Mage is one of 2 magical indirect units. It costs 5,000 and moves 5 spaces. Range is the same as the Hunter, 2 to 3 spaces. Unlike the Hunter, this unit does big damage to just about everything that isn't a Pegasus Knight. That includes wyverns and dragons, which are tough to break past otherwise. It's similarly very weak defensively. When funds are low and you're facing armor knights, this is your go-to unit. Otherwise, maybe save up for this next unit, the Bishop. The Bishop is the more powerful of the magical indirect units. It costs 13,000 and moves 5 spaces. The Bishop's spells boast a massive range of 3 to 6 spaces and does considerably more damage than a mage to the same kinds of units. The Bishop is also able to supply, which means it restores all fuel and ammo to surrounding units, which I suppose in this game you'd call it stamina and weapon durability. That's actually a nice ability to have, as multiple bishops can constantly resupply each other to keep their attacks going. They are again weak in the defensive department, so watch out for that. The Sister. Was this class in Fire Emblem 3? I can't remember. Anyways, the Sister is a mounted unit. She does not attack, but she can carry one of any rogue or knight and move 7 spaces. She also has the supply ability the Bishop had, and costs a very generous 3,000 gold. This carrying ability can sometimes save you a turn or two when trying to reach a key point on the map, even though it may not seem like much considering the knights move 4 spaces and the rogues move 5. It's not much of a difference from 7. But a cheap supplier also helps when air units get involved as well, as they still have that need for fuel, otherwise they will fall and crash. So keep them refueled. The Social Knight. I still don't know what the Social and Social Knight means, but this is another mounted unit. Its cost is very low at 4,000 gold and it moves 7 spaces. If you were thinking the movement alone would make it the best unit here, well, maybe find another game to play. The low cost and high movement make it excellent for swiftly dealing with enemy indirects and knocking out knights and rogues before they capture too much. But keep them away from armor knights, fighters, corsairs, wyvern knights, and dragons. They don't fare too well against these. The Paladin. The Paladin is a much stronger social knight. It costs 11,000 and moves 8 spaces. This unit is way more versatile, though it is costly as well. The highlight here is that this unit is the counter for heroes. They take the most damage from paladins. High movement makes it good at taking down indirects and capturers too. Armor knights, wyvern knights, and dragons are still a threat to paladins, however. The Wyvern Knight. Now who could forget the infamous Wyvern Knight? This unit costs 13,000, it flies, and moves 8 spaces. It's the first air unit we're looking at, so I should point out, to deploy air units you need a stable, rather than a fortress or tower. Wyvern Knights do excellent damage to just about every unit all across the board. Armor Knights, fighters, all of them. Just watch out for the magic units and the heroes, as those do the most damage to a wyvern. The Pegasus Knight. The Pegasus Knight is the cheapest attacking air unit. It costs 5,500 and moves 7 spaces. Pegasus Knights are pretty good against the low defense units such as indirects and capturers. They also boast very high magic resistance. Mages and bishops can't do much to them, so you know who to send against a mage squad. Pegasus Knights are very weak defensively against nearly every other unit, however, especially the hunters. You could think of this unit as effectively being an aerial social knight, as there are much better air units for the late game. The Pegasus Scout. Now this unit definitely wasn't in Fire Emblem 3, but an air transporter had to be in the game, so there you go. The Pegasus Scout costs 4,500, moves 7 spaces, and also boasts very high vision, tied at 6 with a hunter. This unit is able to transport knights and rogues, and since it flies, there are places on the map they can get to faster than a sister. Not much to say other than that. Use it when you need them. They take big damage from basically everything and can't fight. The Black Wyvern. Black Wyverns are the fastest air unit. The cost is 15,000 and it moves 9 spaces, the highest in the game. The Black Wyvern is a pretty annoying unit, as it's able to attack anything for decent amounts of damage, and it can't be attacked by any ground unit except the Corsair and the Hero. These are excellent units for controlling the skies and making life miserable for ground units. Just watch out for other flyers in the aforementioned Corsairs and Heroes. The Red Dragon. One of only 2 dragon units in the game. To deploy one you need to capture a tower. It costs 12,500 and moves 6 spaces. This thing is basically a mighty glacier of a unit. It can handle basically any unit just fine, except for heroes, wyvern knights, and it certainly wants to avoid attacks from mages and bishops as well. They're very annoying to deal with. The best counter is a hero. They're pretty powerful on your side though. The Ocean Dragon. The most unique unit in the game, the Ocean Dragon is deployable from towers, costs 13,000 and moves 9 spaces, and it has a vision range of 6 spaces. Unlike all other units, this one moves exclusively in the water, meaning oceans and rivers. It can dive under the water like an Advanced Wars submarine, hiding itself from view and posing a nasty surprise to anyone that crosses the space it's in. The Ocean Dragon is also an indirect attacker, with a range of 2 to 5 spaces and dealing big damage to basically anything except red dragons and Corsairs. Corsairs are its biggest worry, as they can actually cross the water to get to it, and you have to worry about fuel as well, since it burns 5 fuel each turn while dived. When fighting an Ocean Dragon, pay very close attention to where it dives and where the sisters are to refuel it. The Demon Dragon. This unit is special in that it's only deployable by Iden the Dark Dragon. When she uses her CO power, one of these appears on her HQ and it's a real titan. It moves 7 spaces and, though you cannot deploy it normally, its cost as far as the CO meter is concerned is 20,000. This thing is a powerhouse offensively, dealing great damage to everything. Heroes and Wyvern Knights resisted the best, and also deal the best damage to it along with the Red Dragon. Not much to say, since it's only available through a power or pre-deployed, but suffice to say you don't want to waste a unit as powerful as this. And next up, we move on to the Commanders. Now, the Commanders in this game work exactly like they do in Advanced Wars 2. They have a day-to-day ability that powers up certain units, and as they take or deal damage, they will charge their CO power. Now, there's only one CO power per commander in Fire Emblem Wars, but it charges exactly the same as Advanced Wars 2. The charge is measured by the amount of money damage taken or dealt, so keep that in mind. Next, I'll go over each of the commanders and their abilities. First up, Roy, the star of Fire Emblem 6. You know him, you love him. Roy is our boy. In this game, he basically has Lash's powers, as any defense boosts from terrain are also added to his attack power. His CO power, which costs 7 stars, doubles both attack and defense gained from terrain for 1 turn. A lot of units are able to traverse mountains in this game compared to Advanced Wars, so if you know where and when to use him, Roy can be very powerful, even with a small nerf to terrain defense. Hint! Hunters can go on mountains in this game and they traverse it rather well. Next up is Marcus. In an interesting twist, Marcus is actually useful in this game. Units that cost 6,000 or less gold will get an attack boost, and units costing more than 6,000 will get an attack penalty. This unfortunately means your bishops, paladins, and even heroes are getting the penalty, so Marcus is probably best suited for low-funded maps, of which there are a couple in this game. His power is Jagan Boon and costs 5 stars. It further increases the power of low-cost units. Next up is Irika from Sacred Stones. They're Sacred Stones characters? I love this game. Irika is the game's capturing specialist and captures 1.5 times faster, just like Sammy. She also has Nell's increased luck damage. Her power is Miracle Chance, costing a mere 4 stars. It grants a power boost to all units. Knights, rogues, heroes, fighters, and pirates gain 1 movement and -1 cost on rough terrain for the turn. Interesting selection of units. I get it, they're all direct combat foot soldiers. Anyways, the capturing powers come in handy for some of the capture battles. And who better to follow Irika than her brother Ephraim? Yours truly if I had the confidence of Renee's prince. Ephraim powers up anything with knight in the name, which means Pegasus, social, armor, wyvern, and regular knights too. Oh, and paladins. These are all excellent and useful units, so the boost is not as high as Marcus's boost, but still. His power is Decisive Strike and costs 5 stars. It gives a movement boost of 1 and an attack boost to all knight units. Overall, one of the most all-around commanders. He doesn't take battles he can't lose. And next up we have Merliness. Who invited him? Merliness only gets a 10% discount on all unit prices, so he's like Hachi without the busted powers. His CO power is Supply Line, which increases movement of all units by 1 and restores all fuel and ammo to every unit. Costs 3 stars though, so you'll be using this pretty often. Try him out if you want to get to the more powerful units just a touch faster. Other than that, there's not a lot you can say. Speaking of bland units, next up is Elfin the Bard. Elfin has no specialized units, so the only thing noteworthy about him is his CO power. It costs 8 stars, very expensive, and gives all non-capturers a second turn at the cost of lowering their attack power. Not a lot I can say about the guy, really. The extra turn is as good as a lightning drive in Advanced Wars DS, only it costs way more. Yeah. Let's move on to the next commander, who is, Echidna? Some obscure characters we're working with. Echidna powers up the attack and defense of heroes, fighters, and corsairs, but she has weaker mages, bishops, social knights, and paladins. Definitely an option for rain battles since rain hurts mounted units, and you can stick to the non-mounted units with Echidna. Her power is Heroic Charge. It costs 6 stars and gives fighters, corsairs, and heroes a power boost, and all non-mounted ground units gain extra movement. Next up is the pirate Geese. Yar! Geese be the ocean specialist, like Drake before him. Corsairs and ocean dragons are his weapons of choice, but flying units lose attack. In maps with random weather, Geese increases the chance of rain occurring, and many maps will set the weather to random if you select him. His power is Storm Rush. It costs 3 stars and sets the weather to rain for the turn, and gives Corsairs and Oceans a power boost. Corsairs also get 1 movement. A great commander for maps with lots of rivers or a wide open sea. Next up is, Gonzales. Gonzales be like Grim. Big attack boost for all direct combat units except Knights and Pegasus Knights, but all units have a defense penalty. His power is Berserk Strike, and it costs 7 stars. It gives a dramatic power boost to all direct combat units and increases movement by 2. If you get the drop on your opponent, they won't know what hit him. Not a lot to say about Gonzales, just big attack numbers. That's all you need to know. And our next commander, well, cue the bear fighting music, it's the Silver Wolf. Mounted units in indirect combat are Dayan's game. His mounted ground units can move through force better than other units, and his indirect combat units are stronger. Direct combat units other than Knights, Rogues, Social Knights, and Paladins are weaker. His power is Wind Shot. For just 4 stars, you get an indirect range increase of 2 spaces. Not exactly the monster that Grit was, but you can still do some big damage with Dayan. And our first flying specialist is Juno. Is that pronounced Juno or Juno? I've heard the name pronounced Juno. Anyways, Juno is this game's Olaf in a way. Juno, like Geese, increases the chance of snow occurring in random weather, and selecting her will make some maps have random weather. Her Pegasus Knights are stronger and move 1 space farther day to day, and flying units are unaffected by snow. Yes, only the flying units, don't ask. Her CO power is Flurry, which costs 3 stars and sets the weather to snow. While her power is active, none of her units are affected by the snow at all. So I guess she is kind of the snow specialist, except it's just the flying units that get the bonus to snow movement. I don't know. Next up is Percival. I almost don't remember this guy, and I knew who Juno was. Percival focuses on horseback units. Social Knights and Paladins get an attack boost, but Corsairs and Fighters lose attack power. His CO power is Heavenly Gallop. Social Knights and Paladins get their movement increased by 2 as well as an attack boost. They're even unaffected by weather entirely for the turn. If you love spamming high move units, this is the perfect commander for you. And now we're getting into the burn commanders. Next up is Zephiel, the semi-final boss of Fire Emblem 6, reduced to an armor specialist. Ha! I'm joking. Actually, all of Zephiel's units have a boost to their counter-attack damage and their defense, both of which are pretty valuable in Advanced Wars. Armor Knights can also move 1 space farther. His power is Iron Resolve. It costs 6 stars and grants an attack and defense boost to all units for the turn. Zephiel has no weaknesses or downsides to him, so he can be used pretty much anywhere. Next up is Narcian, the reckless flyer that I never want to look at for more than a few seconds. Narcian's flying units have very big boosts to attack, but their defense is lowered. To be honest, that doesn't matter a huge amount. Flyers get one-shot pretty often anyways, and the attack boost will let them one-shot others in turn. His CO power is Honorless Charge. For 4 stars, this power increases movement for flying units and dragons by 2. Definitely a mighty power for that price. The other burn flying specialist is Milady. I never would have pegged Milady for a Fog of War specialist, but here we are. Her units all have 2 more vision than normal. Black Wyverns and Wyvern Knights get a small boost to attack and defense, but Red Dragons lose attack and defense, and the Ocean Dragon loses attack, defense, and movement. Ouch. Her CO power is Prey Seeker. For 8 stars, she can see into any forest or reef without being next to it, and it halves all damage taken by her flying units for the turn. Bit expensive, but it does make you more survivable. Next up is Guinevere, the magic specialist. Forget Lilina and Lou, I guess. Guinevere has very powerful mages and bishops, but all of her direct combat units and dragon units have an attack penalty. In fact, the dragons and black wyverns get twice the penalty for some reason. It increases her vision by 3 and all units heal for 4 HP. A very useful power. And we have Aiden, the true final boss. Or is she? Aiden has stronger mages, bishops, black wyverns, and both dragons are stronger as well. Red dragons in particular move 1 space farther than normal. As mentioned, her CO power, costing 5 stars, summons a demon dragon to her HQ. It too receives a power boost, but she's the only CO to ever control one, so, I don't know, I guess it might as well be the default stats. This power's might will depend on HQ placement, but a free unit is a free unit. And the final commander of the game is Leon. Leon's interesting. No bonuses or penalties to any units, which in Advanced Wars means you'd better have a good power, and Leon's is interesting at least. His CO power is Demon Light. It costs 5 stars and inflicts 1 damage to all foes and halves their fuel. All units Leon commands recover 3 HP at that time as well. Definitely a power that does a lot at once, and not a huge cost as well, so Leon's interesting. Very interesting to see how it plays out. Well, that about wraps up the intro to Fire Emblem Wars. Do your best in the 30 War Room challenges ahead of you. Good luck, everybody!